Hi, Maria. We are going to get you all caught up from this week. So we are closing out Unit 1, which was about inventors and inventions, and we are getting ready to head into Unit 2 next week. So I'm going to go over the readings this week, as well as the main literacy standards and elements. So this week we read Captain Arsenio, Misadventures in Flight. And this week we're going to learn how to fly. Now, Friday, we are going to be doing our rockets outside. I know that you might miss that. So I do have a rocket save for you for next week. So you're able to participate, and we'll do that at recess. So if you remember that we told 3 stories about men who flew. So these 3 men were inventors who invented different ways to fly. And they're all different genres. So our first one was Icarus. Remember, Icarus was a Greek myth. So those are the ones that teach us a lesson. And I'll give you a quick recap of each one at the end once I get to the third man. But Icarus invented wings that flew. And there is a link for the video in case you need a refresher. Our number 2 man was the Wright brothers. This is George and Orville Wright in 1903. And they're the ones that invented the very first plane. And that only lasted in flight for 12 seconds. Here is the video to recap on that.
The Wright brothers.
And then there's also a video of the very first flight that I'll play for you real quick.
This film, made in 19, man's age-old dream of flight becomes a reality. This film, made in 19.
And then we have Leonardo da Vinci. Now, Leonardo da Vinci had flying inventions, but he never made them because he used his inspiration from a bat and did not think about how our arms are different than a bat's arms. So his inventions were actually not able to be made and functionable from humans, but they were still flight inventions. Here is the ornithopter, which is his flying invention. In the
All his life.
So what do all these men have in common? They all invented ways to fly. And here are the 3 story recaps. I'll read those to you now. So Icarus and the Sun. The story of Icarus is about a young boy who loved to fly. His father, Daedalus, was a clever inventor who made wings for them to escape from a tall tower. Daedalus warned Icarus not to fly too high because the sun would melt the wax holding the wings together. But Icarus was so excited that he flew higher and higher. As he got too close to the sun, the wax melted and the wings fell apart. Icarus fell into the sea and could not fly anymore. This story teaches us to listen to advice and be careful when we're excited about something. Number 2, the Wright brothers. The story of the Wright brothers is about 2 brave men named Orville and Wilbur Wright, who dreamed of flying in the sky. They were very curious and worked hard to build a flying machine. They tested their airplane in a place called Kitty Hawk, North Carolina. After many tries and some crashes, they finally made their airplane fly for the very first time on December 17th, 1903. This flight was short, but it showed that humans could soar like birds. The Wright brothers' hard work changed the world and made it possible for people to travel by airplane. Number 3, Leonardo da Vinci's flying machines. Leonardo da Vinci was a very smart artist and inventor who lived a long time ago. He loved to think about how people could fly like birds. Leonardo drew many pictures of flying machines, like huge wings and funny-looking helicopters. Even though his flying machines were never built, his ideas were very clever and helped people understand how flying could work. Today, remember Leonardo was a great thinker who dreamed about flying long before airplanes were invented. So the main things we need to remember from these 3 men are that Icarus and his father Daedalus invented wings that flew, and the lesson that we learned from the story was to listen to advice and be careful when we're excited about something. Because he didn't listen to his dad, and when he flew too close to the sun, what do you think happened? The wax melted. And from the Wright brothers, these brothers made the very first plane. So they invented the very first plane. And number 3, Leonardo da Vinci, his inventions were never made. So although They were very clever and very above and beyond his time. They were never invented and they would not work. So now we're going to read our story. Sorry, I have so many links open. They're right here. So Captain Arsenio Inventions and Misadventures in Flight. This is going to be a fantasy story. So these are imaginative stories that contain characters and events that are not real. The plot of a fantasy story usually includes a conflict or a problem and its resolution or how it's solved. Fantasy stories often include sensory details and figurative language to develop the setting and the characters. Fantasy stories may include illustrations that describe the characters and setting or give clues about the plot. So let's set our purpose here. So I know I just gave you a lot of information. So we know a fantasy story is not real and it is something that could not happen. So I'll show you examples of that while we read the story. You also know there's going to be a problem and you also need to know how it's solved. And it also says it includes sensory details. Now, you know the 5 senses. So you have touch, taste, hearing, sight, and smell. So let's say you read a book about how good cookies smell. It wouldn't just say the cookies smell. It would say the warm chocolate chip fills the room. That way you can yourself go, ooh, it smells like chocolate chip cookies in here. It's going to use figurative language. It's going to use the sensory details to really put you in the story. So here's Captain Arsenio. So you can tell it's a fantasy story as well, because he looks like a human, but also doesn't look like a human. So you know that this is a person, but you know that people don't look like this. Like his jaw, his nose, his teeth. You would never see a person looking just like this walking around, but he also has human-like features. You can also tell it's a fantasy because we know that this is a bird right here. You know it's a bird because you see the wings and the beak, but you also know that that's not what a bird looks like. So this is the author's rendition and version of a bird. So it makes it more fantasy-like. So this first page is going to introduce some of our vocabulary we're tested on this week, as well as set us up for the story. The result of looking up. Flight, one of the most ancient wishes ever known, has inspired hundreds of fantastic creations, from Icarus to the Wright brothers. We just talked about them. History has seen thousands of adventurers who have felt the dangerous urge to soar with birds. This passionate impulse has resulted in many failures. So passionate and impulse are some of our vocabulary words. So passionate is to have a passionate feeling or strong emotions about. So if you were an artist, you'd be passionate about painting. If you were a chef, you'd be passionate about cooking. And an impulse is the desire to do something. You just couldn't stop yourself. You had to do it. Scientists, philosophers, doctors, and even crazy people all been pioneers of aviation, and each has made a different contribution, sometimes right, sometimes wrong, to the pursuit of flight. This is the story of one such man. So a contribution is a person who helps make something. So let's say you're doing a group project. You would be contributing to the group project. You wouldn't be doing it all by yourself, or you wouldn't not do it at all. You would help out your group. You'd be contributing. So here we see all these people pointing up, looking at the bird. There's also this big word here called aviation. Aviation has to do with flight. The ends and the beginning. Manuel J. Arsenio was a careless cheese master, blacksmith, scuba diver, and ship captain. Though he was given the easiest of missions in each of these careers, he still could not complete any of them successfully. This problem may be the reason he left those jobs behind to enter the distinguished pages of aviation history. Distinguished as a group is a distinguished group is known and respected for its excellence. So he wouldn't be part of the greats. He wouldn't be an Icarus or a Wright brother or Leonardo da Vinci of aviation. One day in 1782, Captain Arsenio decided to build the first in a long series of eccentric projects that would change his life. Eccentric means odd or a little different. And although he had little knowledge of physics or mechanics and had access only to useless materials, He demonstrated great patience and determination throughout the course of his flight experiments. The discovery. How do we know about Captain Arsenio? His diary was found by chance just 1 year ago, under circumstances, to be discussed later. Circumstances is the way an event happened or the cause of it or are its circumstances. So let's say that you eat way too much dessert after dinner. The circumstances of that is your stomach's gonna hurt because you did something else is gonna happen. It's cause and effect. And it's 90 pages full of doodles, notes, and technical writings. Do you remember when we made our ice cream inventions? And we drew our inventions, then we wrote stuff around it and explained how it worked. That's what his diary looked like. Arsenio developed 18 different designs for a flying machine, each one original, foolish, and fantastic. Here we explore 3 of the 18 most influential projects that have contributed to modern aviation. Captain Arsenio's diary is the oldest and most precious aviation manuscript ever known, second only to Leonardo da Vinci's. Fortunately, the text is still legible. That means you can still read it. And Arsenio's notes, diagrams, and ideas take us back in time to reveal the hidden mystery of the inventor's thoughts. So we're going to be talking about 3 different inventions that Captain Arsenio made. So this is project number 1, the Moto Canary. The Moto Canary was an ingenious experiment that demanded a lot of work. Evidently, it was hard for Captain Arsenio to find enough birds and tie them together with a rope than it was to achieve flight. Although the discovery was revolutionary, it took 2 days to get the captain down from the tree in which it was stuck. So here's the diary page. And evidently means it happened for an obvious reason. So if you look at this invention right here, do we think this is going to work? Why or why not? So you can see his thought process. He goes, okay, birds fly. So I'm going to tie a bunch of birds that fly to myself so that way I can fly. And here we have his diagram to show how that's going to work. Now let's see if it does. So this is his flight diary. Number 1, the selection process is demanding and exhausting. I accept only those who have wings. So look, it says it took him 14 hours to find his birds. Number 2, I start running and the birds accept the challenge. The glory is mine, mine. This took 10 minutes to run with the birds. Step 3, my feet leave the ground and I have control of the height. My bones feel the change. I'm almost another bird. So for 4.5 seconds, he's in the air. But then it seems that without warning, some of the engines have changed directions. They are not going where I want them to go. So as soon as he starts flying, the birds all go different directions. They don't want to fly all in the same direction. And look, the rope snaps. The change of direction causes the rope to break. Note to self, next time use iron cables instead of woolen rope. I've headed dangerously close to that tree. Oops. The Moto Canary needs improvement. A, I must choose more obedient birds. That means birds that listen. B, I must test the design in a field without any trees. C, I must always carry a ladder with me. So he took 2 days, 14 hours, 10 minutes, and 7.5 seconds on this invention, and he only flew for about 7 seconds. This is his invention number 2, the flying runner. Good cardiovascular health, cardiovascular means your heart, so good heart health, would become a determining factor in Captain Arsenio's second ambition, the acceleration, that means you move faster, of the runner would, according to his plans, the wings to beat up and down in imitation of a bird's flight and lift the machine off the ground. The direction control is unknown. So you can see how he's taking inspiration from birds. Leonardo da Vinci did that too when he used bats. And the Wright brothers looked at birds, and so did Icarus when he made his wings. So here he knows he needs to move faster to be able to make his invention work. So he has a little treadmill here. And look at these wings. It looks like they're made out of a cheese grater. So let's see if this one's going to work. Number 1, countdown to 0. I'm preparing for the big run. I've got faith. I start the acceleration and the wings seem to be in working order, but I'm not elevating yet. So the wings are flying up and down. He's running for 21 minutes. The machine starts to rise at maximum speed. I'm starting to get very tired. So he's been running for 21 minutes. Now he's getting tired. All systems go. The balance is controlled. The prototype is a success up until this point. So a prototype is a really rough model. It's one of the first versions of something. Just like our ice cream inventions were prototypes. And when we talked about Henry Ford and Thomas Edison, they were making prototypes before their inventions. So I hear some strange noises. They come from the pulleys. So here we have a simple machine. So it looks like it's malfunctioning a little bit. There seems to be a small problem. Yes, there's a tiny problem, but I will have it under control. I will land now. I need to call a doctor. So he only made it up in the air for about 2 minutes. And again, he went, ooh, and fell. Our third and last invention is the corkscrew putibus. Now, no one knows what's going through Captain Arsenio's mind when he conceived, that means he thought of, this contraption. What we do know is that he placed so much emphasis on getting off the ground that he forgot a substantial part of the matter. That means important. How to keep himself in the air. Obvious results. So here we have his diary entry. And so Captain Arsenio thought, okay, I need to get in the air. So he attached himself to this big spring with wings, but he didn't make the wings work. He was only focused on getting in the air. So what do we think is going to happen? Everything is ready for takeoff. The jump is possible. I start the countdown now. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Oh, the acceleration is violent. I've conquered gravity without any problems. Look, the spring burst and he's in the air. I've already passed through the clouds. I start the controlled descent. Now it's time for the wings. Uh-oh. Descent is completely under control, although the wings do not respond as I had expected. He did not make the wings work. So again, he fell. The doctor is not at home. I will call the veterinarian. Goodbye from below. As it happens with almost all legends, multiple versions contradict one another. Proof disappears, and word of mouth constructs stories that differ greatly from the reality. No one knows for certain exactly what happened to Captain Arsenio and his flying machines. All that is left is his diary. 90 pages of consecutive failures. That means one after another and one and after another of all failures. And one big question, did he eventually succeed? Some say that Arsenio's book was buried near Cairo, Egypt, 7,508 miles away from where he lived in Patagonia, Argentina. Others disagree and tell us it was in a chest at the bottom of the sea, buried under a pile of rusty metal junk. But most people insist with determination that Captain Arsenio's diary is found on the surface of the moon on July 20th, 1969. So let's answer some questions together. How has the narrator come to know so much about Captain Arsenio? What does the author seem to think of him? So we're going to answer these questions using our 5th grade words. So instead of who, what, when, where, why, the 5 W's, we have our version, the who, what, but, how. So we know our who is going to be Captain Arsenio. That is the only person in the book, and it's called Captain Arsenio, Inventions and Misadventures in Flight. So our who is Captain Arsenio. Here, let me open up a document to write this down with you. 1 second. So we have our who, what, but, and how. Now we know our who is Captain Arsenio. And what did Captain Arsenio do? Well, we know he was an inventor. And we know he invented flying machines. But what happened? Did the flying machines work? No. The flying machines all failed. How? How do we know this? We know this because he left something behind. He left behind a diary. So we have our who, what, but, and how. Captain Arsenio was an inventor who invented flying machines, but the flying machines all failed, and we know this because he left behind a diary. So we're able to retell the entire story just with 4 questions. Now for our test this week, I'm going to go over it with you and then send you home with one as well. So we went to the main focus of Captain Arsenio, and we know it's a tale about a captain's journey and his inventive flying machines. The following characters in the story, our options on the test are Icarus, Leonardo da Vinci, Captain Arsenio, Wilbur Wright. Now we know it's not going to be Wilbur Wright because we never even mentioned Wilbur Wright. And we talked about Icarus, Leonardo da Vinci, but they aren't in the story. Captain Arsenio is in the story. Now, what did Captain Arsenio primarily invent? We know he invented flying machines. And what lesson can be learned from the story of Icarus in relation to Captain Arsenio's adventures? Well, we know that in Icarus, he didn't listen and he flew too close to the sun, quote unquote. So we know to be careful and to not overreach one's abilities. How does Captain Arsenio's approach to invention differ from Leonardo da Vinci's? Well, we know that Leonardo da Vinci did not invent his inventions, but Captain Arsenio did. But he probably shouldn't have invented them because none of them worked. And then we need to make sure that we can answer in short answer, what is one major difference between Captain Arsenio's flying machines and those of Leonardo da Vinci? We just went over that. And describe a key lesson from the story. So we can use Icarus's lesson in this one as well. So for this week, I will send home, it's the 10 questions on the test. And then you have your 10 vocabulary words that we all just went over in the story as well. So I hope you feel better. If you have any questions, let me know. And then we'll be all ready for our unit next week about more genre exploration and what a story.